kindness and compassion. Not the top priorities. According to one noblewoman, discipline reigns supreme. And Alicia Williams, with her unwavering sense of order, would never tolerate any commoners who couldn't keep up. Alicia? Oh, she's the Villainess in this girl's favorite autumn game, known for tormenting the heroine. But rather than despising her, our protagonist admired her sharp tongue and relentless attitude. The heroine? Too sugary for her taste, what with her angelic smile and knack for manipulating the prince's feelings. While her friends dreamed of becoming the adored heroine, she knew that if given the chance, she'd much rather be the Villainess. And then, it hit her, she is the Villainess. Reincarnated as the 7-year-old Alicia, daughter of the prestigious Williams family, she was no longer the meek child she once was. Instead, she saw this as her opportunity to be the most legendary Villainess in history. Alicia darted down the hallway past her bewildered mother and maid. Gone was the lazy girl of yesterday. She had big plans, starting with sword training from her brothers. Henry, the stern one, scoffed, thinking it was another whim. Alan, the playful one, laughed it off as typical. Only sweet Albert agreed to teach her if she could complete 100 sit-ups and 50 push-ups daily for a week. No problem, she thought, as she dashed off. Next up, magic. Alicia knew that mastering the arcane arts, especially with her family's dark magic pedigree, was essential. However, the Williams library was surprisingly lacking in magic books. Undeterred, she grabbed a book on plants instead, figuring she'd need more than just magic to be the ultimate Villainess. She learned about fever-curing herbs, glowing flowers, and flying trees. So engrossed was she in these strange new discoveries that she lost track of time. Who knew botany could be so villainously fun? Turns out Alicia's brain was top tier when it came to academics, but her body, not so much. After barely squeezing out 50 shaky push-ups, she realized physical prowess wasn't in the cards for her, at least not naturally. But ambition waits for no one, so she kept pushing through. To her surprise, the next day, those push-ups and sit-ups were a breeze. By the end of 7 days, she'd leveled up dramatically: 300 push-ups, 500 sit-ups, and a library's worth of knowledge crammed into her head. She was a training machine, and her progress had the whole family on edge. Her father, Arnold, couldn't help but ask what had possessed her, especially with the whole waking up early thing. Alicia, now radiating suspiciously good vibes, smiled and assured him she was just fine. She knew she was giving off major, plotting something evil energy, which only made her giddier. After all, no one would believe she remembered a past life as a Villainess enthusiast. When her mother mentioned that Albert was out touring the Magic Academy preparing for his upcoming enrollment, it meant her sword training had to wait. But Alicia didn't let that slow her down. By the time her brothers returned, they were with all the other noble heirs who would soon be conquerable routes in the game. There was Eric of the Hudson family with fiery red hair and, of course, fire magic. Finn from the Smith family, a light magic prodigy. Gale of the wind-wielding Evans family. And Curtis from the Kenwood family with green magic, an outlier not from the 5 great noble families. And then, there was Prince Duke Seeker, heir to the throne, water magic user, and the guy destined to end up with the game's heroine in the good ending. Alicia. She was totally into him in her past life, but romance was for the heroine. She had bigger plans, like making her mark as the world's greatest Villainess. When Alicia ran up to greet them, her brothers introduced her to the group, who all found her adorable. Internally, she was melting at their good looks, but externally, this was her moment. She couldn't let the world's future Villainess be seen as some bumbling child. With perfect grace, she curtsied, and the boys were genuinely impressed, especially since her brothers had painted her as a bit of a wild child. Duke, however, was less captivated, more focused on the boys showing off their sword skills. Cue Alicia, reminding them that today was the day they'd promised to teach her. Her brothers brushed her off, clearly not taking her seriously. So, what did she do? She grabbed Albert's sword, kicked a tree, made a fruit fall, and sliced it in half with zero effort. "Don't underestimate me," she declared, now basking in the astonished looks of her brothers. Duke, who had previously been aloof, was finally paying attention, picking up the sliced fruit with a smile. Looks like she'd made her impression. A year into her sword training, Alicia was still stuck in the endless loop of practice swings, all because her brother insisted swordsmanship was pointless if she couldn't hold a sword for hours on end. Honestly, if she weren't on a mission to become the world's greatest villainess, she'd have quit ages ago. The only silver lining: Prince Duke had been making regular visits to their house, and let's just say, she didn't mind the royal eye candy. One day, mid-break, Duke approached and casually asked if she was done for the day. It was the first time he'd spoken to her directly, which was a moment. She replied she was just resting, and he asked why she worked so hard at swordsmanship. She almost blurted out her grand plan to become a villainess, but caught herself, instead saying, "I'm aiming for a villainously strong grip." He chuckled nervously, clearly not prepared for that, then patted her on the head, which instantly turned her into a flustered mess. Enter Albert, and Duke quickly stepped back, apologizing for interrupting her training. Albert wasn't buying it. Afterward, he grilled Duke on why he'd been hanging around so much lately. At first, he thought it was for the books, but now he was starting to suspect the prince had a thing for his little sister, who, of course, was already swooning. Meanwhile, King Luke was busy with the kingdom's VIPs, discussing the crumbling state of Lona Village. Apparently, living conditions there had been spiraling, but rushing in aid wasn't the best move politically. Instead, they shifted focus to finding the legendary Golden Rose, hoping it could bring a much-needed dose of optimism to the kingdom. The conversation eventually turned to Alicia, who had become quite the social butterfly, receiving invitations to various noble estates. Her father, Arnold, still couldn't wrap his head around her sudden shift from being a self-centered little terror to a well-mannered, book-obsessed mystery. At one such tea party at Finn's estate, Alicia walked into the guest room, only to find the whole autumn game cast assembled and a suspicious map laid out before them. Panic set in. Was the plot fast-forwarding to her character's exile already? Before she could spiral, King Luke himself entered the room, asking to speak with her. Seriously, what was going on? The king threw her a curveball, asking what she thought about the kingdom of Durkee's current state. At first, Alicia was confused. Why on earth would the king be asking an 8-year-old about politics? Then it clicked, this was a villainous test. She channeled her inner mastermind, pointing out that while the kingdom was economically strong, the wealth gap between nobles and commoners was ridiculous. People in Lona, she noted, could barely afford bread. Tensions were high, and a rebellion seemed inevitable. The king, clearly intrigued, pushed further, asking how she'd fix it. Alicia didn't miss a beat, suggesting they fund Calvara's independence, gaining a strong trading partner without declaring war. A move that was cunning and, of course, something the pure-hearted heroine would never do. Alicia was feeling more villainous-like by the second. After some royal praise, the king made his exit, leaving Alicia to breathe a sigh of relief. Duke, having witnessed it all, asked if she was nervous. She glanced up at him, thinking, yep, definitely attractive. Elsewhere, Lord Evans dropped the bomb that the Golden Rose had been found. Things were getting real. Meanwhile, Alicia found herself at a dessert table, eagerly stacking macarons on her plate. Duke, who had been staring at her the entire time, couldn't hide his smile. Curtis teased him, remarking that the Ice Prince seemed to have been thawed by an unexpected spring breeze. Later, as the sun set, Duke handed Alicia a belated birthday gift, a diamond necklace that left her absolutely floored. Diamonds were worth a fortune here, way more than in her old world. She couldn't wrap her head around why he'd gift her something so extravagant. Back at the castle, the nobles gathered to watch the Golden Rose bloom, confirming the birth of the saint, a girl destined to guide the kingdom alongside Duke. But with every great transformation came turmoil, and they all braced for the rocky road ahead. As for Alicia, she was in her room, casually doing squats while wearing her brand new diamond necklace. And even if Duke one day fell for the heroine and demanded it back, she was already planning to look him dead in the eye and say, nope, because that's what a true villainess does. The next day, Lisa is in the library, poring over a map when she notices how close the village of Lauren is. All I have to do is cross the forest easy peasy, right? She muses. Though she had fed the king dramatic stories about the village's grim streets and starving peasants, she admits, those tales came straight from books. I need to see it for myself. There's just one problem. Tell my dad. He'd lock me in a tower. That night, Lisa stages a convincing performance of being exhausted, sneaks out under the moonlight, and ventures into the forest disguised. The darkness unsettles her more than expected, but she reassures herself, the village has a magical barrier, and I've got magic, so I'll breeze through, I hope. Pushing forward, she finds the magical wall and passes through, only to be greeted by a stench so foul it makes her gag. She spots a homeless man lying nearby and whispers, "How did things get this bad?" Before she can dwell on it, a voice asks, "What are you doing here? You're not from around these parts." She spins around, ready for dread, but instead, she feels a strange warmth from the man. He introduces himself as Will, and despite his disheveled appearance, he seems kind. He invites her to his place, apologizing for not having much to offer. Lisa, intrigued by his politeness, asks about his past. Will reveals he once worked in the royal palace but lost his sight and was exiled after angering the wrong noble. Lisa is horrified. How could they do that to you? Will, ever philosophical, replies, "We study history to make today better than yesterday. Books are fine, but if you don't use that knowledge, what's the point?" His wisdom takes Lisa by surprise. "I can't believe someone as brilliant as you was exiled," she says, shaking her head. Feeling a connection, she opens up about her ambition to become the greatest villain in history. Will listens patiently, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. Before leaving, Lisa promises, "I'll be back. You're way too interesting." 2 years later, after practicing her sword skills, Lisa frequently visits Will. One day, her brothers invite her to join them on a city outing. Albert and the boys have recently enrolled in the Magic Academy, and Lisa suspects the heroine might meet Prince Duke there, sparking the beginning of a romance. They visit a plant shop, where she strikes up a conversation with the shopkeeper, Paul, a fellow noble. He proudly explains the healing properties of plants, to which Lisa responds by rattling off facts about a rare herb called Joja, impressing Paul with her knowledge. Finally, they arrive at Prince Duke's quarters, where he playfully chastises the boys for leaving him out. When Curtis asks Lisa if there's anything she desires, she doesn't hesitate. She wants to test her sword skills. But her overprotective father and brothers have slammed the door on that dream. Big Bro is having none of it. She's 10, and hello a girl. Lisa isn't buying it. "There's nothing in the rules about gender," she retorts. "If that's your decision, I want to hear the logical reason." But her brother shuts it down like an email on a Friday night. "Don't bother, I've already decided." Furious, Lisa declares, "I'm not coming back until you give me a real reason," and storms out, channeling her inner Villainess. While taking a dramatic palace stroll, Lisa overhears her brother saying, "She's stubborn, but if we keep saying no, one day she'll just do it herself." Their father responds cryptically, "We can't tell her the real reason." Cue Lisa bursting into the room like, "Were you guys talking about me? Spill the tea." Her father gives her the soft parent look and says, "You're still young, my wonderful daughter. You'll find out at 15 when you enter the academy." Lisa reluctantly agrees, but her father whispers to her brother, "Her sword skills are no joke. If she takes the test, things could get complicated. We've got to protect her childhood, for now." Later, Lisa's lying in bed, plotting her villain arc. "I want to be the greatest villain, but I'm only 10. Moping around won't help." She decides to visit old man Will and spill all her secrets. Maybe he can help her level up. Cut to Lisa heading into the dark forest, wondering if Will's home. It's her first time in the village during the day, and she quickly sees why it's not on anyone's travel list. Poverty everywhere. She's horrified by the scene, especially when a man kicks a child hard enough to send him to the if they had one. Lisa's about to jump in when Will yanks her back, like, "I told you not to come here during the day." She protests, but Will shuts it down. "Worry about yourself first. Never come here during daylight." The next morning, Lisa heads to Paul, the local herbalist, asking for Joja plants to heal that injured kid. Paul's curious but doesn't pry and hands over the plants as a gift. He's trying to keep her coming back to the shop. That night, Lisa sneaks back to the village. Will tells her the boy's not fully healed, but her Joja plant mission saved his life. Lisa, feeling powerless, mutters, "What's the point of becoming the greatest villain if I can't act when it matters?" Determined, she vows to go all in on her studies to become history's most legendary villain. The next day, Lisa decides that magic is her ticket to power. While she's at the library talking about her ambitions, a magical aura surrounds her, and surprise, a hidden section of the library reveals itself, packed with ancient spell books. Lisa's mind is blown. This is it, the key to my villainous rise. She learns that reaching level 50 magic is no small feat. Only the 5 great magical families can usually do it, and the highest recorded level is 100. But if the heroine and Duke could beat that, why not me? Lisa places a book on the floor and tries to levitate it. It floats victory, but crashes down seconds later. Frustrated but motivated, she trains like a magic-obsessed Rocky. Days later, Lisa has mastered object manipulation, a level 5 magic skill. She's proud but totally wiped out. Her body's heavy, and a headache starts pounding. Classic magical burnout. Just then, her dad drops in with some royal news. "The king's here to see you." Lisa meets the king, who compliments her, while she wonders why all the important people are suddenly in one room. The king asks, "Do you love this kingdom?" Lisa, caught off guard, gives her honest opinion, criticizing how the nobility works. Magical power and political authority shouldn't go hand in hand. The current system? Total waste of talent. Her bluntness shocks the nobles, and they tell her to watch her tone. The duke's surprised by her audacity, but the king, clearly intrigued, presses further. "What you said applies to you too. Would you give up your noble status?" Lisa, totally unfazed, says, "Sure, I'm cool with that. Being born into a noble family was just luck. No need to cling to it." The king is impressed. "You're one of a kind," he says. As Lisa leaves, she reflects on the day's events. Exhausted, she plans to rest but promptly collapses with a fever. Duke rushes to her rescue, carrying her to her room and making sure she's taken care of. After some time, Alicia found herself back to full health, credits God, and a little medicine for her recovery. As she wakes up, she can't help but wonder, what's Prince Duke's deal? Does he see me as a sister, or is he just a charming rogue? Determined to lean into her new villain arc, Alicia steps outside with a mission: sneak into the Magic Academy. That big building? Yeah, that's gotta be the one. I know it's early to meet the heroine. Of course, there's a slight hitch. I don't even know what the heroine looks like. After wandering through what feels like a maze of a garden, she thinks, "This place is enormous. I'm not even at the school yet." Sneaking around, she spots some workers but quickly nixes the idea of asking for help. If they realize I'm a kid and a trespasser, I'm toast. Just then, a girl sneaks up behind her and asks, "Lost, little one?" Enter Blee Cather, a student. Alicia, confused by the name, thinks, "Cather? Never heard of that family." Blee reveals she's from a humble bakery-owning family, leaving Alicia bewildered. Wait, isn't she the heroine? How can she be a commoner? Blee, equally intrigued by Alicia's looks, introduces herself, and the two share a laugh. Blee smiles, saying she hopes they'll be friends. Alicia, floored by her angelic grin, mentally notes, everyone's bound to love her. The duo makes it to the school, where some girls approach Blee. Before Blee can explain her lost child discovery, Alicia vanishes, spying on them from a distance. Just then, Prince Duke arrives, and Blee fills him in about the mystery girl. Alicia watches, noting their closeness. They seem tight. Noted. She sneaks into the academy, now confident no one will notice. I've come this far, time to explore. She finds a treasure trove of books on dark magic and beams with excitement over the Academy's vast resources. I can't wait to grow up and enroll here. Meanwhile, in a classroom, students gossip about a child prodigy dark hair, around 10 years old, who's been solving problems beyond their skill level. As they debate who this genius could be, Alicia strolls up to the board and casually explains a geopolitical strategy. One boy blurts out, "Is this what 10-year-olds think about?" The room is stunned. Back at home, Alicia overhears her father talking with Mr. Joan about Blee, calling her dangerous. When her father catches Alicia eavesdropping, Mr. Joan threatens, "How much did you hear? Should I just erase your memory?" In a panic, Alicia promises not to spill the beans about Blee's extraordinary abilities. But she didn't seem evil. Is she really a threat? Her father dismisses her concerns, and when asked if she met Blee, Alicia cleverly dodges, saying it's just a feeling. That night, Alicia hones her magical skills, showing impressive control. Her brother enters, informing her that Blee wants to meet. Alicia greets her warmly, surprising, given her supposed villainess role. At a gathering, Alicia shares her ideas, while recalling that this is the moment in the game where Prince Duke and Blee get closer. She can't just let that slide. Time to make her move. Approaching them, Alicia seethes. How dare a commoner like her get close to Prince Duke? But before she can strike, Blee enthusiastically thanks Alicia for her contributions, further fueling Alicia's irritation. To stir the pot, Alicia suggests Blee showcase her magic on stage. Blee, being annoyingly agreeable, accepts without hesitation. Alicia's frustration boils over. Seriously, she'll agree to anything. When Blee invites Alicia to join her on stage, Alicia quickly declines, stating she's not a student. Blee, ever the sweet one, reassures her, but Duke steps in, telling Blee not to pressure Alicia. Feeling a little guilty, Blee wonders what she did to offend Alicia. Alicia responds coolly, "Not everyone gets along, and that's fine." But Blee, undeterred, says, "If we just talked more, I'm sure we could become close friends." Henry jumps in, agreeing. He advises Alicia not to write people off so quickly. Reluctantly, Alicia agrees to give Blee a bit more conversation. Later, Blee asks about Alicia's favorite flower. "Lily of the Valley," Alicia replies, "beautiful but deadly." Blee shares her love for marguerites. After a round of small talk that feels more like an interrogation, Alicia grows bored. To mix things up, she conjures a marguerite flower with her magic, declaring, "A perfect flower for a perfect girl." The crowd is stunned by her magical prowess. Henry, sensing trouble, orders Alicia back to her room. Alicia leaves, puzzled. What did I do wrong this time? Later that night, Alicia drops the bomb on Will. "I can use magic now, but I'm just a beginner." Will, trying to play it cool, reminds her that most kids don't get their magical spark until they're 13. Then, in true wise mentor fashion, he tells a cautionary tale about some hotshot who thought they could handle level 100 magic at a young age. Spoiler alert, they couldn't, and poof, no more magic, ever. Will gives Alicia the classic slow and steady advice. Just then, Jill wakes up, but instead of being grateful, he stays silent. Will explains, "Don't mind him. Jill's had it rough, he's about as social as a brick wall." Alicia, clearly not bothered, remembers Liz's deep life lesson about marguerite flowers being symbols of trust and honesty. Alicia, being teen villain, thinks she's the perfect heroine, and I'm here trying to be the best bad guy ever. In a bold move, Alicia decides to motivate Jill the only way a villainess knows how. "You should just die already. What's the point of living if you're going to hide from everything?" Jill snaps, "I didn't ask for your help." Alicia, in her not-so-evil way, responds, "You don't get it. Keeping you alive benefits me. You're smart, and I can use that. But remember, I'm the villain in this story." Jill, rethinking life choices, throws a pillow at her, shouting, "I won't let you kill me." Alicia smirks. "Good. As long as you fight, I'll keep you alive." I need you useful. Confused, Jill asks, "Why are you doing this?" Alicia answers, "Because I'm selfish. I need your brains for my plan." Overhearing, Jill's father chimes in, "She's odd, but she's got a good heart." Jill, starting to see her differently, says, "You're not what I expected, but thanks. I'll help." The next day at the palace, the king's assistant is surprised. "Wait, Alicia couldn't use magic before? Is she the saintess?" Duke shuts it down. "No, that's Liz. Golden flowers, magical elements, that's all Liz." The king, unconvinced, warns, "Keep an eye on Alicia. We don't want her magic spiraling out of control." Joan and Arnold agree to keep her under strict training. Later, Alicia admits to her brother that her magic got a little wild. He reminds her of Liz's magical display when Duke had to step in. Alicia, competitive as ever, thinks, "I need Liz around. I want a rival." Cut to Alicia in her room, casually showing off her magic by controlling books effortlessly. Joan tells her, "The king wants to fast-track you into the Magic Academy. You're in at 13. Keep it up." Alicia, unfazed, replies, "I've been training every day." Fast forward 3 years, Alicia's summoned by the king. He's impressed. "You've really leveled up." Arnold adds, "She's had perfect control for 3 years. The king asks, "What's your magic level now?" Alicia proudly says, "Level 80. Impressed, the king grants her academy admission, but with one condition: keep an eye on Liz. With the king dropping a bombshell on Alyssa, he wants her to keep an eye on Liz. Alice is baffled, so the king dives into the story of the Saint Girl, a beautiful, pain-immune legend who helps the royal family bring good vibes to the kingdom of Dorcas. He thinks Liz Cather is the modern-day saint, and surprise, he's heard Alyssa has already met her. Alyssa confirms, describing Liz as sweet as sugar. The commander then hands Alyssa some papers about the village of Lana. She reads them and practically shouts, "What is this nonsense?" The commander explains that if Liz is to work with the government as the saint, she needs to have a good head on her shoulders. His genius plan: get Alyssa to mentor Liz into becoming a respectable saint. Alyssa, momentarily stunned, wonders, will this make me the best person ever instead of being, evil? But evil is my jam. Cue the dissenting minister, who objects to Alice's new role, saying it's far too dangerous given the academy's current chaos. The commander fires back, pointing out that Liz's popularity has skyrocketed, turning admiration into full-blown adoration. Still, the minister warns there are critics lurking in the shadows who might stir up trouble. The commander offers Alyssa an out, telling her she doesn't have to play the villain if she doesn't want to. But the word villain triggers something in Alyssa, and she eagerly accepts, declaring she's aiming to be the greatest villain of all time. Later that night, Alyssa spills the tea to her friend Will. When he asks what's in it for her, she casually says, "Oh, nothing, really. I just made the king agree to my terms totally for free. And oh yeah, Gil is coming with me." The scene shifts to the commander, who is debriefing ministers on Alyce's demands, including her insistence on bringing Gil from the village to the academy. Everyone's shocked to hear Alyssa has been secretly visiting Lana for years and is tight with Gil, whose father was killed and who narrowly escaped a similar fate. Alyssa vouches for him, calling him a diamond in the rough who just needs a shot at a proper education. Cut to Alyssa telling Gil that he'll be joining her at the royal palace as her servant. Gil, understandably floored, reminds her that only nobility can serve the crown. Alyssa, ever the smooth talker, tells him not to sweat the details, he's coming with her. Will chimes in, pointing out no one's ever left the village before, to which Alyssa smugly replies, "This is just the beginning. Soon, the whole village will be the talk of the town." She then asks Grandpa Will if he wants to tag along, but he refuses, calling himself a washed-up criminal whose fate was sealed when he landed in the village. As Alyssa's about to leave, a wounded girl grabs her, pleading for help. Without skipping a beat, Alyssa scoops her up and rushes to a safe spot, but not before catching the eyes of a crowd. Alyssa purifies some water, because of course she can, and gets to work healing the girl's brutal burns. Gil and Grandpa will arrive, and Alyssa, being extra as always, throws up a barrier to block prying eyes. Despite the girl's severe injuries, especially her dead leg, Alyssa pulls off a near miraculous healing. Unfortunately, the leg is too far gone, so she whips out her sword and amputates it. The girl wakes up, understandably confused, and asks, where's my leg? Alyssa calmly explains that the leg had to go, or it would have taken her life with it. Introducing herself as Rebecca, the girl now finds herself Alyssa's new personal tomb. With the barrier down, Alyssa fills the villagers in on her heroic deeds. Then, with a cryptic wink, she asks Rebecca to rally the village, saying she plans to use the saint as an excuse for her next move. Gil, utterly lost, asks what she means by that. Alyssa spills the beans, saying she'll mentor Liz and Lana, but assures Gil that she'll be pulling the strings from behind the scenes. Grandpa Will, now thoroughly intrigued, decides to stay in the village just to see what kind of chaos Alyssa stirs up next. The next morning, Grandpa Will bids farewell to Alyssa and Gil as they leave the village. Gil is wowed by the city's beauty, feeling happy to be back. Meanwhile, Alyssa has a little heart-to-heart with her dad. He asks, "Aren't you regretting your decision?" Alyssa, queen of no regrets, replies, "Not even a little. But hey, you promised I could take the duel test, what gives?" In full dad mode, tells her she's such a swordsmanship prodigy that the test isn't even necessary. Fast forward to Alyssa arriving at the academy, where she gets all the attention. Meanwhile, Gil overhears some girls chatting with Liz, asking if she's Albert's sister and gushing over her beautiful hair. One of them gets a little too handsy, touching Alyssa's hair. Cue Alyssa, who smacks the girl's hand away. Right on cue, Liz shows up with her squad of 4 young men. The hair-grabbing girl whines to Liz about Alyssa calling them obnoxious, but Alyssa, ever direct, says, "Well, you are." Liz tries to step in, all peace and love, asking Alyssa to apologize. Alyssa, channeling her inner villain, refuses and walks off, proud of her evil potential. Just when Alyssa's feeling good about her bad self, Duke with teleportation magic whisks her away. The guy's obviously fond of her, even sniffing the necklace he gave her as a kid. Alyssa thinks he might break it. How embarrassing would that be? But instead, he whispers sweet nothings and pats her on the head. "You're no villain," he tells her, "and you never will be." Alyssa, creeped out by his womanizer vibe, pushes him away and bolts. The next morning, they both stumble upon Liz, surrounded by admirers, sipping tea like royalty. Alyssa, plotting something wicked, picks up a paper Liz wrote. After reading it, she tosses it aside, calling it boring, shallow, and totally unrealistic. The crowd, now riled up, wonders how Alyssa dares to insult Liz, but Liz stays calm and asks, "Why do you find it unrealistic?" Alyssa, never one to hold back, explains that Liz's dream of tearing down the village walls and eliminating inequality is a fairy tale. She points out that breaking the wall won't magically erase centuries of division. Liz argues that tolerance will bring peace, but Alyssa fires back with idealistic nonsense. Reality's more complicated, and your article doesn't get that. Tensions rise, but Alyssa keeps schooling them, saying, "Look, I'm not here to flatter anyone. It's just surprising no one's pointed out these flaws before." One person blows up, shouting, "Don't insult our bond," Alyssa retorts. "If indulging her is your idea of love, you're all useless." Liz finally steps in, defending her friends and saying, "You can reject my ideas, but don't insult them." Alyssa, now in full debate mode, compliments Liz's magical abilities but drops a truth bomb. "You, Liz, are the very symbol of inequality. Talent, family, looks, no one's truly equal. That's what drives people to improve. If we stopped praising strengths for the sake of equality, wouldn't that be an injustice, too?" Liz, visibly shaken, can't respond. She can only mutter, "I just want to create a world where everyone's happy." Alyssa, unimpressed, sighs and says, "Well, that was disappointing. I was hoping for a real debate." She struts out, leaving Liz's friends to console her. Alyssa, now reveling in her villain role, basks in the glory of having crushed Liz's spirit. She vows to stop Liz in her tracks, proving she's the true queen of villainy. In the school hallways, Alicia walked with her head held high, students throwing her looks of scorn and whispers of the nasty girl who dared bully St. Liz. Alicia reveled in the hatred. The disruption she brought to the once peaceful school filled her with pride. Jill, her friend, couldn't understand why everyone took Liz's side after all. Liz was always just preaching grand ideals while everyone else gossiped over tea. But Alicia was unbothered. To her, this was just a sign she needed to spread her bad reputation even further. Her goal was clear: she would become the greatest villainess ever. That evening, after checking off homework, Alicia and Rebecca went to Will's house, where Rebecca, who'd been gathering intel from the village, shared the latest. Tensions were high among the villagers, and some even hinted at plundering everything if they ever managed to escape. Alicia expressed concern for Rebecca's safety, especially with her missing leg. But Rebecca, unfazed, reassured her. Alicia's backing was all the protection she needed. A sentiment that delighted Alicia to no end. She was starting to sound like a real villainess. Rebecca went on to explain that, though the villagers had long ago lost hope of change, her resilience was inspiring them. They didn't see her as a savior, though, so she suggested Alicia bring crops from the outside that the villagers could cultivate. At home later, as Alicia was working on a proposal for Lona Village, her older brother Henry seemed oddly clingy. She noticed he hadn't been spending time with his twin, Alan, and he admitted he was distancing himself. The two had been inseparable until recently, but ever since joining the academy, it was all Liz this, Liz that from Alan, and Henry felt he no longer understood his twin. Liz had tried to comfort Henry, but he wasn't falling for her charm. Instead, he came to Alicia, not to praise Liz, but to share his doubts and ask why she kept clashing with the saint. Alicia brushed off any grand schemes, though Henry looked unconvinced. As he left, he handed her an invitation to the king's next tea party where, unsurprisingly, Liz would be present. At the tea party, Alicia's other brother, Albert, warned her to behave. She recognized this event as the Saint test from the game where the heroine could earn Saint points by making the right choices. With Alicia attending, though, it became her personal Villainess test, her chance to prove herself as Liz's watcher. As the four siblings arrived, Liz greeted them with a smile, while two of her devoted admirers blushed. Alicia, all smiles but sharp as ever, greeted her with, "How unfortunate for you that I'm here." Finn, watching from nearby, couldn't tell if they were friends or foes. Liz, ever the saint, insisted they were great friends. Alicia disagreed. The king soon entered, thanking everyone for being friends with his son, Duke, and encouraged them to relax. Not that this tense tea party allowed for that. Liz, seated near the king, looked every bit the heroine, and Alicia grudgingly noted she had the nerves for it. For Alicia, this was a real-life saint test. If she was to succeed, she'd need to play her part to perfection. When the king commended her for her sharp insight, recounting how she'd predicted Durin's economic troubles 3 years prior, Liz seemed shocked. She'd assumed Durin's economy was stable. Alicia coolly explained that Durin's production didn't match its consumption, and previous measures were little more than temporary fixes. Knowing this was a test of her watcher role, she kept her composure. Liz proposed an alliance with Durin, but Alicia questioned the logic of aiding a bankrupt country. Liz countered that sincerity was key to helping people, to which her fanboys heartily nodded. Alicia, ever practical, reminded her that good intentions don't solve national crises. Gale challenged her, demanding to know her solution, and Alicia proposed making Durin a vassal state, a plan Liz called cruel, of course. Alicia argued that Laval, a neighboring kingdom with whom they had a complicated alliance, could easily seize control of Durin if they didn't step in. Even Derek, a noble, agreed, citing rumors of border tensions. Liz, distraught, wanted to help Durin's people, but Alicia emphasized the importance of protecting their own kingdom first. Durin needed economic self-recovery, not handouts. Alicia even suggested exporting local goods, sparking Liz's idea about Durin's potato crops. In the end, Liz reached the right answer, but Alicia's subtle nod from the king confirmed her success. As the tea party ended, she knew she'd passed her real test not as a saint, but as the ultimate villainess. The four simp boys, entirely oblivious, cheered Liz on with over-the-top praises, gushing about her brilliant ideas as if she'd single-handedly saved the world. With her test safely behind her, Alicia noticed even Duke seemed a little proud of her. But wandering the halls alone afterward, she found the whole party exhausting and couldn't wait to get home. Once the king left, the gathering transformed into the All About Liz show. As she drifted through, her eyes caught the royal family portraits, particularly one with an empty spot. Then she noticed a painting of a young boy who looked like Prince Duke, standing beside a familiar man. Duke appeared and explained it was his father and grandfather from years ago, noting he took after his dad but inherited his mom's skin tone. Alicia, recalling that King Luke had an older brother, was tempted to pry but decided against it. When Duke offered to walk her out, Alicia struck her villainous pose, teasing, "Sure you wouldn't rather stay with Liz?" She half expected him to lecture her, but he simply pointed out she looked hopelessly lost, so he was showing her the exit. Mortifyingly, he was right, and she trailed behind, noticing he only ever smiled at the game's heroine. But when he offered her his hand, his smile didn't seem fake. Meanwhile, Jill was spying on Alicia's morning training when Henry struck up a conversation with him, quickly coaxing Jill into spilling that he was from Lona. Observing Jill's nervousness around everyone but Alicia, Henry advised the boy to mask his emotions or risk becoming her weakness. Alicia arrived, quashing any rumors of her hatred for Liz with a smirk, claiming her true dream was to be a villainess and that opposing someone as perfect and adored as Liz was just exhilarating. Henry burst out laughing at the absurdity but accepted it. On their carriage ride, Henry still chuckled at the thought. He viewed Liz as a protagonist in some grand tale, her every word ringing with unearned depth, even the most obvious of statements. Nice girls weren't usually his type, yet he was clearly smitten. Jill, feeling something was off, asked if there was a spell at work. Alicia mulled it over, feeling Liz's unnatural sway on people was eerie. Though Henry ruled out mental manipulation magic, noting it only worked short-term, Alicia wondered if some ancient grimoire might hold the answer. She refused to believe Liz was so insidious as to manipulate people, yet her fairy tale innocence was straight out of the game. Ironically, Alicia was now worlds away from her own character's version back then, talentless and eventually exiled. Determined to change that fate, she'd worked hard to become stronger. As they pondered, they were ambushed. Jill caught in the grip of strangers who yelled at Alicia to run. Before she could react, a blow to the head knocked her out, and she woke up bound in a storage shed. The kidnappers dragged a battered Jill in, and that's when Alicia's patience snapped. She tries to use her magic to escape, but it's blocked by a collar. Turns out, they came prepared. Jill, still crumpled on the floor, urges her to bail through the northern exit, but another kidnapper steps on him like a rug. The guy casually wonders if they should just off Jill since he won't fetch any ransom. Alyssa, not having any of it, kicks the guy in the face. Jill, ever the optimist, insists she should run. The kidnappers swarm, but Alyssa is quick on her feet, knocking one down and freeing her hands. She grabs her weapon and instead of slicing throats, she taps the guy with the back of it. She's got principles, after all. Jill can't help but admire her calm demeanor in the chaos. Another thug pulls out a sword, but Alyssa, ever resourceful, snaps it in half. As he tries to flee, Alyssa chases him down like a lioness on a hunt. Just as she's about to finish him off, Liz swoops in, scolding her for being too violent. Jill shouts from the window that the real enemy is the one running. The distraction allows the man to draw a second weapon, but before he can even swing it, the prince bursts in like a knight in shining armor, saving the day, albeit with a side of drama, since he's injured himself protecting Alyssa. The Duke, barely fazed by his arm injury, brushes it off like it's nothing, while others rush to check on Alyssa. Albert, the ever-dramatic one, is in full protective mode, making sure Alyssa is okay. Liz accuses her of trying to kill a defenseless man, but Jill jumps to her defense, clarifying she was just defending herself. Albert, ever the knightly figure, tells Alyssa she should have tried a little diplomacy, but Alyssa fires back with a question. Wouldn't you fight back if someone tried to kill your family? Albert stumbles over his own chivalry, while Liz goes on about how violence leads to more hatred. Alyssa dismisses her, saying she had no choice but to defend herself. The prince, now visibly annoyed, throws a tantrum and uses ice magic on Liz, declaring that if Alyssa hadn't fought back, the boy would be dead. He chastises Liz for being clueless. Their friend steps in like the grown-up in the room, reminding them that Alyssa's safety is the priority and starts treating her wounds. Alyssa, noticing she's missing a tooth, realizes the seriousness of the situation. Liz offers to heal her, but the Duke cuts her off, saying they don't need her help. He insists on taking Alyssa to his place, where she's so embarrassed, she practically turns into a tomato. She asks him not to treat her like a child, but the Duke, in full overprotective mode, insists he's not leaving her side. Alyssa starts to suspect there may be something more to his concern. Maybe it's not just knightly duty, but something a little more romantic. But no, she tells herself, the prince is the one who's supposed to end up with the heroine, and her heart can't handle the confusion. The next morning, Alyssa wakes up, and surprise, she's in bed with the Duke. She freaks out, wondering how she ended up there, but before she can process, the Duke casually mentions finding her necklace and asks her to come closer so he can put it on her. Just then, Jill and Henry waltz in, acting like it's just another day in the neighborhood. Jill, relieved that Alyssa's finally awake, reassures her he's fine now, thanks to Henry's doctoring skills. Then, in a quirky move, Jill shows Alyssa the tooth she lost, asking if he can keep it as a memento of the day's drama. Apparently, teeth can hold memories, and Jill doesn't want to forget. Alyssa, feeling a little guilty, lets him keep it, though she's still embarrassed. Henry chimes in, encouraging Jill that he'll grow into a strong, capable man. Alyssa, curious, asks who was behind the attack. Henry reveals it was Neil, an academy student and Liz's loyal follower. He had attended the Rose Garden tea party and glared at her like she was the last piece of cake. Alyssa, shocked, realizes she's been played and vows to make sure Neil doesn't get away with what he did. Alyssa said firmly, and Henry, ever the realist, replied, "Last time I saw you, you were pretty much on death's door in the Duke's arms." So, the royal family already gave the Johnsons a slap on the wrist. They even banned taking the magic collar out of storage. But hey, they still managed to bring in outsiders and nearly get a student killed. Alyssa, meanwhile, was thinking, I'm out of moves here. Then the Duke dropped the bomb. I suspect my father's behind this. Jill asked, Wait, are you saying the king ordered this? Alyssa shook her head. Not exactly. I think he saw it as an opportunity to train the saint. The Duke nodded sagely. I tracked down the mastermind, and he spilled. Apparently, a watcher sent by my father told Liz where Alyssa was. It was all about pushing her to grow stronger as the saint. Jill blinked. Is the saint really that important? Alyssa just dropped the mic. Yep. According to legend, the saint saves the kingdom. I'm just here to be the perfect test for her. The Duke sighed. Seems my father's obsessed with the legendary saint. Jill raised an eyebrow. But you're supposed to marry Liz, right? Isn't that how the story goes? Alyssa thought. That's how it's supposed to go. But it's not my fate. I'll be fine with that. The Duke, however, said, Not for me. I make my own destiny. Happiness is something you carve out for yourself. Jill, feeling a little guilty for being blunt, apologized. Sorry, I didn't get why you and Alyssa are so close, especially with Liz around. The Duke was casual. Titles mean nothing to us. We protect Alyssa because we understand. Alyssa, meanwhile, was focused on growing stronger. Level 80 at your age? That's impressive, Jill said. Instead of being the villainess, why not just be the prince's partner? Alyssa responded, I won't just be remembered as someone's wife. I need my own legacy. I have to challenge the saint. It's the only way. Jill sighed dramatically. Poor prince. Just then, one of the maids called her over to her father's office, where he dropped his decision like a bombshell. She'd have to stop playing bodyguard for Liz and leave school until she was older. No way was he going to let his precious daughter run headlong into danger. Alicia, however, was having none of it duty called, and she wasn't about to back down. Her father then hit her with a reality check. Liz was already over level 80 in every element, and as powerful as Alicia was, she couldn't touch that. Still undeterred, Alicia kept pushing, so her father raised the stakes. If she wanted to keep protecting Liz, she'd have to hit level 90. Alicia gulped, realizing she'd dug herself into a bit of a hole, but she accepted the challenge. Determined to rise to the occasion, she locked herself away in an annex, ready to train like a woman on a mission because now it wasn't just about protecting Liz, it was personal. We see Gil hanging around outside Alicia's cottage, where she's been buried in her studies. A maid shows up, bearing food for Alicia, but she's forced to leave it outside thanks to Alicia's magical, no-entry barrier. With no further business at the cottage door, Gil wanders back to join the maids, commenting on how fortunate they are to have such tasty food and cozy quarters. The maids, baffled by his enthusiasm for their humble potato fare, listen as he reveals his rough upbringing. Feeling a mix of pity and camaraderie, they pile his plate high with whatever meat, apples, and extra potatoes they can spare. As Gil digs into his meal, he's soon seen alone in the library. No one's going to tell me I'm not capable just because I'm a commoner. Right on cue, Alicia's father strides in, handing him a potion to help him slip through the barrier and get back to his village. When Gil cautiously asks why the old man didn't just kick him out, Alicia's father explains that he's grateful for Gil's friendship with Alicia, as he realizes he can't always understand her. While other girls were playing, Alicia was studying as if her life depended on it, and Gil is the one friend she's chosen of her own accord. The father only hopes Gil sticks around and that their friendship lasts. Gil, caught off guard by Alicia's father's openness, admits he once thought him strict for isolating Alicia in that cottage. Her father laughs, clarifying that it was Alicia's own choice to train there with the goal of reaching level 90. He had only intended to keep her from an observer role if she fell short, planning to return her to the academy when the time was right. Gil, reassured, urges him to trust her more. Alicia is much stronger than anyone realizes. But her father still has concerns, especially about her friendship with Liz, fearing it may lead to trouble. He even reveals that the king recently apologized for an incident and offered Alicia a break from her observer duties, though he secretly hopes she'll persevere. Gil, unimpressed, questions if they truly think Liz is the kingdom's salvation. Alicia's father acknowledges Liz's magical prowess, but believes Alicia's skills are also valuable. Gil, however, is tired of the kingdom duty rhetoric. He bluntly points out that Alicia is a child being exploited, sharing how she's confided in him about the kingdom's fixation on magic, which leaves non-magical individuals overlooked. He explains that Alicia wants to train him to be someone of worth, and he's committed to standing by her. The scene shifts to the village, where the elderly Will admires a plentiful potato harvest, surrounded by cheering children. Reflecting on how much they've achieved thanks to Alicia, he remarks, "Who'd have thought we could grow our own food? The town will thrive now." Just then, a young thief tries to steal a sack of potatoes but is stopped by Nate, who firmly says, "If you plant this much food out in the open, expect visitors." The villagers explain they're training family to guard the fields and invite Nate to stay. Skeptical, Nate questions if Alicia a noble really intends to free their village. To him, it seems like charity work. But a villager stands up for her, explaining that if she only wanted to feel virtuous, she could have handed them food and left. Instead, she taught them how to farm in their climate, giving them the tools to become self-sufficient. Whether they sustain it or not, She's sparked a change they're determined to keep alive. Finally, we cut to the Duke in conversation with the King. The King, surprisingly nonchalant, acknowledges the Duke's recent involvement in Luana's troubles and hands him a book, Alicia's Proposal, which outlines a way to address the region's humanitarian crisis. Originally a prison for criminals subjected to large-scale magical punishments, Luana, as Alicia has pointed out, is an enormous waste of land and magic. The King, admitting past kings have always postponed dealing with Luana, tells the Duke he is the best person to finally take charge of it. The Duke, not missing a beat, mentions that the King's overwhelming list of priorities may actually be holding the kingdom back. He suggests it might be time to place more faith in local governance, clearing the way for quicker, less bogged-down decision-making. The King considers this, realizing that maybe it's time for the kingdom to take a page out of the "let's trust the people" playbook. Sensing an opening, the Duke offers to take on the headache of reforming Luana if Luke's game. Luke consents, impressed by Alicia's flair for political reform at such a young age. He can't help but think it'd be a waste for her to stay on the sidelines. 6 months later, Gil and Henry catch up, and Henry wonders how intense Alicia's training is, as she's still the most talented. Gil recalled watching Alicia train, remembering how she once said she would never catch up to Liz Cather. Despite that, Alicia was determined to get as close as possible to Liz's level of power, even if hard work never seemed to truly pay off. Henry was taken aback by how far his little sister was willing to go to compete with Liz, especially since Liz was a true prodigy, able to cast multiple complex spells at once. Still, Henry believed Alicia could eventually rise to Liz's challenge. One day, Duke became downcast, hearing that Alicia still hadn't returned. Students began whispering, claiming that Duke must be miserable because he hated Alicia so much, worried she might come back to the academy. Hearing this, Henry glared at them. He hated how the students misunderstood Alicia, spreading rumors instead of supporting her. If they didn't stop, he'd personally see to their expulsion. Curtis arrived, teasing Duke not to be so intimidating, as school life should be healthy and cheerful. Henry commented that no matter how hard he tried to clear up the bad rumors about his sister, no one believed him, they just thought he was being a good brother. Curtis brought up the rumors about Alicia visiting Duke at night, and Duke sighed. Had he known the kind of gossip that would follow, he would have avoided it altogether. Liz appeared, noticing Duke's gloomy expression. She suggested some tea and pastries to cheer him up, but Duke was annoyed hearing the boys behind her praising her treats. The girls behind them went on about how great Duke and Liz looked together, implying that with Liz around, Duke could forget how troublesome Alicia was. This only made him more frustrated. Liz tried offering him a cake she'd put her heart into making, but Duke turned her down, saying he wasn't in the mood before walking away. Eric reassured Liz, and Albert joked that Duke might be upset because of his stupid sister. Liz, however, was confident she could bring back Duke's smile, much to the delight of the boys. As more girls gossiped about Alicia, Duke glared at them, but Finn casually guided the prince away, commenting on how interesting things had become. Finn noticed how the girls, who had once hated Liz, were now all about her, even though they used to bully her. Duke didn't comment, continuing to leave the scene. Curtis thanked Finn for helping de-escalate things. He was struggling to keep the student council together, while Finn seemed to enjoy watching everything unfold. By the water fountain, Duke instructed a mysterious pink-haired girl named Mel to investigate Liz, suspecting there was something behind her ability to make everyone adore her. He also wanted her to look into Lona. 2 years later, Henry gave Gil some sweets to help her focus. With less than a year until Liz Cather graduated, Henry assumed Alicia would have met her father's conditions by now. On Alicia's 15th birthday, her father tried to talk to her about returning to the academy, but she turned him down, saying she was just getting to the good part. Then, a maid announced Alicia had completed her training. Gil rushed to the annex, finding the barrier gone, and inside, he saw Alicia, who marveled at how much he'd grown. Alicia sitting at home when Jill enters the room. Alicia immediately remarks on how much he has grown and matured, confessing that she barely recognized him. Embarrassed, Jill admits it's been a long time and fumbles to find the right words. With a reassuring smile, Alicia gently places a hand on his shoulder and suggests they head to Luana village together. He agrees, and they set off. As they walk through the forest, Jill couldn't understand why Alicia was so determined to visit the village before even seeing her own family. Alicia shrugged it off, saying she'd learned everything she needed to during her 2 years away. When they arrived, Alicia was amazed to see how much the village had improved, with everyone working together. Nate, the village guard, approached to thank her, crediting her efforts for the village's prosperity and for sparing the children from starvation this year. Despite his gratitude, it was clear he didn't fully trust her. Alicia, ever composed, welcomed his wariness. Nate's demeanor shifted, accusing her of returning after 2 years to toy with Rebecca and the villagers for some noble's amusement. Jill tried to explain, but Alicia interrupted, challenging Nate to a duel to test their abilities. Nate hesitated, reluctant to fight someone who looked as delicate as Alicia, but her sharp taunts pushed him into action. A crowd gathered as the two clashed, and to everyone's astonishment, Alicia easily defeated Nate. While some villagers accused her of cheating, Nate silenced them, acknowledging her skills and confirming the duel had been fair. Alicia explained her victory with calm confidence. She had been raised as a noble, with endless time and resources to train, as well as skilled brothers to learn from. She pointed out that if Nate had enjoyed the same privileges, the match could have ended differently. Nate, still skeptical, questioned why she was telling him this. Alicia clarified that she wanted him to learn from her, especially since he clearly cared about protecting people, like Rebecca. Their exchange was interrupted by Will, who called Alicia as reckless as ever. She ran to embrace him, revealing she had mastered dark magic up to level 91. Before Will could object, she cast an ancient spell that transferred one of her eyes to him. Will was shocked and distraught, but Alicia remained firm she wanted him to see, knowing he'd never ask for such a sacrifice. For the first time, Will looked upon Jill and the villagers, marveling at their faces. When Alicia returned home, her father was horrified to see her missing eye, fearing she'd been injured during training. Upon learning she had given it away willingly, he was overcome with disbelief. Later, in his office, Alicia reassured him she wasn't the delicate, privileged girl he wanted her to be, but was determined to live her life her way. Though still worried, her father congratulated her for surpassing level 90 and granted her permission to continue her role as Liz Cather's watcher. Jill gave Alicia a beautifully crafted eye patch, which inspired her to create a striking outfit to match. When she returned to the academy after 2 years, she made a dramatic entrance dressed entirely in black, fully embracing the role of a villainess. Jane, one of Liz's devoted followers, wasted no time confronting her, mocking her bold attire and claiming Alicia could never compare to Liz. Alicia calmly agreed that inner qualities mattered most, but she called out Jane's hypocrisy. Jane had just criticized her appearance. When Jane retaliated, accusing Alicia of being filthy inside and out, Alicia delivered a ruthless critique of Jane's disheveled hair, crooked ribbon, and ill-fitted skirt, suggesting Jane's own inner self was on full display. Jane tried to excuse herself, saying Liz assured her she was perfect as she was. Alicia pressed further, questioning why Jane hid her eyes with her hair and why Liz had never complimented her freckles. Liz arrived and was surprised to see Alicia. Jane played the victim, accusing Alicia of insulting her, but Liz reassured Jane of her worth before turning to Alicia for her side. Alicia laughed, freely admitting her remarks were true and declaring herself a wicked woman. Liz brushed off Alicia's confession, wanting to reconnect. She admitted regretting an incident 2 years ago when she'd acted on assumptions and restrained Alicia. Liz thought Alicia had stopped coming to school because of that moment, but Alicia corrected her she wasn't the type to dwell on pity or sympathy. What truly surprised Alicia was Liz's admission of regret. Liz explained her belief in her duty to bring happiness to everyone, fueled by her unshakable optimism. While her words inspired the crowd, Jill privately dismissed them as naive. Alicia bluntly told Liz that her streak of good fortune wouldn't last forever. Then, leaning in, she whispered, "Tell me the truth, don't you hate me?" 2 years ago, Alicia had suspected the truth. Liz's decision to restrain only her during that critical moment spoke volumes. With her talents, Liz could have easily immobilized both Alicia and the assailant simultaneously. Now, as Alicia confronted her, Liz trembled, unable to deny the malice in her past actions. She tried to refute it, insisting that the saint could never harbor such feelings, but Alicia pointed out that Liz couldn't even recognize her own hatred. Alicia challenged Liz to take being good seriously if she truly wanted to embody the role. To her, Liz was all talk, delivering hollow promises without ever taking meaningful action, yet somehow always securing a happy ending in true opportunistic fashion. This had always irritated Alicia. How could Liz dream of saving everyone without a concrete plan? If Liz wanted to make a difference, Alicia demanded she stop hesitating and start following through. Jane, watching the exchange, demanded to know what Alicia had done to leave Liz visibly shaken. Alicia dismissed her concern, simply stating she didn't want Liz's so-called saving. Alicia's goal was to stay true to herself, even if it meant being hated by everyone. A week later, Alicia and Jill aced their entrance exams, earning spots in the most advanced classes. Initially, the counselor praised the Williams family for providing Jill with excellent tutors. However, Alicia corrected him. Jill had achieved everything through his own efforts. This revelation softened the counselor's tone, as he lamented the limitations imposed on commoners without magic. Afterward, as they walked the academy halls, Alicia elaborated on the societal constraints Jill faced. In their kingdom, an aristocracy, commoners who couldn't wield magic were often dismissed outright, even for roles that didn't require magical ability. Alicia found this bias infuriating. Suddenly, a torrent of water materialized before them, revealing an angry Prince Duke. His eyes landed on Alicia's eye patch, and his frustration spilled over. Brushing him off with a nervous laugh, Alicia teased him for his dramatic greeting after 2 years apart. But Duke wasn't amused. He had heard about her giving away her eye, and his anguish was evident. He told her she didn't understand how painful it was to watch her over the years. Alicia realized his anger was laced with sadness. He accused her of treating her villainous role like a game since childhood, but his voice faltered when she coldly dismissed him with, "You're bothering me." For a moment, Duke looked broken. He apologized and walked away, leaving Alicia with a pang of guilt. Jill, sensing her turmoil, lightly teased her, saying the response was very on brand for a villainess. Alicia took it to heart, reflecting on her actions. Sparring with rivals and exchanging witty barbs was one thing, but trampling on the emotions of someone who genuinely cared for her, that was crossing a line. Deep down, Alicia knew she never wanted to see Duke's face so distraught again. Whenever he looked at her, her thoughts seemed to scatter, leaving her flustered. Why couldn't things ever go right between them? Outside the window, Mel had been watching everything unfold. Shaking her head with a smile, she called Alicia a clumsy villainess. The episode begins with Alicia and Jill at the academy. Jill casually suggests they skip class and sneak out, but Alicia declines, explaining that skipping would make all her hard work meaningless. She heads to the lecture hall, greeting her peers, only to be met with surprise. The students question her presence, and Alicia reveals she's joined their class, having found the lower-level lessons far too easy and dull. Her blunt confidence, however, comes across as arrogant, irritating her classmates. Liz steps in, urging the class to stay calm. While Alicia's words were harsh, Liz insists isolating her is wrong and encourages everyone to welcome her instead. Liz then greets Alicia warmly, but to everyone's shock, Alicia pointedly ignores her and chooses a seat far away. After class, Liz approaches Alicia, inviting her to lunch. Alicia coldly refuses, stating she has no intention of befriending her. Undeterred, Liz presses on, saying she genuinely wants to start over and share stories. Alicia, taken aback by Liz's kindness, silently marvels, is this girl even human? She must be an angel. Despite her admiration, she declines, blaming her bad mood, and walks off with Jill. Later, in the garden, Alicia reflects on her role as the villain. She admits it feels wrong to compare herself to Liz, the heroine, but also questions her feelings for the Duke. Jill suggests distancing herself to gain clarity, but Alicia refuses, saying it would feel like running away, something a proper villain would never do. "I want to be the perfect villain," she declares with determination. The focus shifts to Liz and others at lunch. Meanwhile, the Duke sits alone, deep in thought. Alicia notices his somber mood and approaches to apologize for her previous harshness. Fully embracing her villain persona, she confidently steps closer, grabs his chin, and declares, "Listen up. I'll never watch someone I care about from afar. I'll protect them openly, with my own hands." The Duke, taken aback, laughs and promises not to hold back anymore, challenging her resolve. Their moment is cut short when someone requests the Duke's input for the upcoming music festival. As he excuses himself, Alicia finds herself unexpectedly pleased. Even minor interruptions seem to fuel her ambition to be the ultimate villain. Later, a fellow student apologizes and invites Alicia to follow them somewhere. Alicia coldly refuses, retorting, "I won't follow someone without a reason. Do you think I'd tag along so easily?" When the student fumbles and drops their books, Alicia wordlessly uses magic to lift them, leaving the girl's intentions ambiguous as she walks away. After school, Alicia receives a letter inviting her to the Rose Garden. When she arrives, Jane, one of Liz's sisters, sarcastically thanks her for coming and accuses her of bullying their friend Mara out of jealousy. Jane claims Alicia targeted Mara because she couldn't stand losing to Liz, the virtuous heroine. Confused, Alicia denies the accusations, insisting she doesn't recall any such events. Jane then plays a recording of Alicia's harsh words. Though the recording seems edited and incomplete, it stirs the crowd against her. Alicia defends herself, asserting she's innocent and that judging people based on partial evidence is foolish. Her defiance angers the group further, who remain convinced of her guilt. Suddenly, Carol, another student, steps forward to defend Alicia. She argues that the accusations lack evidence and urges the group to hear Alicia's side. Alicia is startled by Carol's unexpected support. However, Jane dismisses Carol's words and insists the recording is proof enough. However, Mill arrives unexpectedly, holding proof of Alicia's innocence. She plays the unedited recording, which provides critical context missing from the altered version. Everyone is stunned as the full truth comes to light. Mill confronts the group, questioning, "Why are there two recordings that sound almost identical? One of them must be fake. Do you really think an earth magic specialist can't tell the difference?" Mara, trembling, admitted, "Jane ordered me to do it. She said she needed a reason to turn everyone against Alicia. I was too scared to refuse." Jane, now enraged, tries to redirect the blame to Alicia, accusing her of being rude to Liz. Liz is kind and strong for tolerating Alicia's harshness. "Didn't you all say you couldn't stand her either? That's why I felt it was my duty to punish her," Jane declares. But Liz steps forward, apologizing to Alicia. "This is my fault," she admits. Jane protests. "I did it for you. Even if you didn't ask me to, I couldn't just turn a blind eye." Remaining composed, Alicia replies, "You didn't do anything wrong. I understand your reasoning. I won't accept your apology, but I won't dismiss it either." Mill then approaches Alicia and says, "Let's leave. There's so much I want to talk to you about." As they leave the tense scene, Alicia suddenly asks Mill, "Who are you? There's no way you could have recorded that conversation so perfectly unless you knew what was going to happen. You weren't even there." Mill smiles and responds, "I'm your biggest admirer. Your silky black hair, radiant pale skin, sharp words, and fiery, determined eyes, they're magnificent. I also can't stand Liz. She meddles in others' lives, pretending she understands them, and yet people follow her. There's no evidence she uses spells or tools to influence minds, but it's suspicious how most remain silent and compliant. Only a few resist her, likely to avoid trouble. Mill continues, I admired how you opposed Liz in the Rose Garden. You were brilliant. Watching you gives me strength. Before Alicia can reply, the Duke appears, striking Mill lightly on the head. I apologize for the trouble caused by my subordinate, he says. Mill is my personal spy. She's eccentric but a genius with earth magic. Rubbing her head, Mill explains, Earth magic allows sound recording and lets you erase your presence. That's how I recorded the conversation. The Duke adds, I asked her to keep an eye on you, but only occasionally. She has her own duties, and I didn't want her to infringe on your freedom. I love seeing you full of life. But now that you know, I'll reconsider my approach. Mill's decision to reveal herself was unplanned, but I'm glad it allowed me to speak with you directly. Alicia responds with a smirk. So you knew all along that I play the role of the villain. That makes me feel like a co-conspirator, not that I mind. Suddenly, she gasps. Oh no, I just remembered something important, she dashes off, with Jill following her. Alicia feels slightly disappointed in herself, wishing to be the kind of lady who could make even a princess's heart race. The two then head to Rowena Village, where Will has implemented some notable changes. He reveals a stunning truth. He is the older brother of the current king, and his full name is Y-Seeker. Reflecting on the portrait, she now recognized the man beside Duke as his older brother. Will, seated around the fire, Will began weaving the tale of his life, a story as grand as it was tragic. The firstborn son of the previous king, Will's life was marked by early loss. His mother died soon after his birth. Instead of seeking solace in family, he poured himself into magic, achieving level 80 by the age of 10. A prodigy by all accounts, he humbly believed rulers held a greater power than any mage. Yet brilliance comes with its risks. One reckless experiment led to a level 100 spell that obliterated a castle in a frozen tundra. Though his life was spared, his magic was not. From that moment, the kingdom's hope for an heir shifted to his younger brother Luke, born a year later under unusual circumstances. Will became Luke's steadfast supporter, crafting policies while his brother ruled. It worked smoothly until Will proposed sharing power among the 5 great noble families. Luke, swayed by their mother, rejected the idea outright, leading to a fierce argument. I don't need advice from someone who isn't even king, Luke had shouted. It was the last thing Will heard from his brother before being exiled on accusations of treason, a plot orchestrated by Luke's mother in the shadows. Dumped in the village of Lona, blind and broken, Will awoke to whispers of his supposed crimes. As he touched his gouged-out eyes, realization dawned in a scream. Accepting his exile as the price of his hubris, Will spent years reflecting on his mistakes. While the kingdom recorded him as missing, the truth of his banishment remained a secret known only to a select few. Alicia, ever perceptive, realized why Will was telling this story now. He was ready to confront Luke. With no legal record of a crime, Will could dispute the false charges and, more importantly, ask his brother to free the villagers of Lona. But first, he wanted to apologize to admit he had failed to respect Luke's pride as king. Grateful to Alicia for encouraging him, Will's words left her unexpectedly bashful. Later, as Alicia and Jill strolled across campus discussing Will's aspirations, 3 girls intercepted them, sneering about Liz. They called her a commoner who had schemed her way onto the student council. Alicia countered swiftly, praising Liz's abilities even while disagreeing with her views. Then, she casually pointed out Jill's intelligence as a commoner, which outshone all 3 of them, sending the girls into a huffy retreat. Alicia smirked, confident her villainous points had just risen, while Jill could only sigh. In class, Jane approached Liz with an apology for her recent schemes. Liz, however, turned the moment on its head, apologizing instead for creating the conditions that led to Jane's actions. She then urged the boys to stop excluding Jane, and they agreed, restoring their group's tea-time camaraderie. But Albert, passing by Jane, whispered coldly for her to avoid Liz altogether. Crushed, Jane lashed out at Carol, who had merely been watching from the sidelines. Meanwhile, Henry found Alicia, hinting at trouble brewing. Her eyes sparkled with excitement at the prospect, a reaction Mel overheard before sprinting off to fetch Duke. Henry protested, knowing Duke's fiery temper flared around Alicia, but Mel was already gone. Spotting the group, Finn and Curtis decided to follow, sensing entertainment more compelling than their game of catch. With a dramatic flourish, Alicia made her entrance. Liz confronted her immediately, repeating the trio's claim that Alicia had been spreading malicious gossip. Calm and collected, Alicia dismissed the entire scene as ridiculous, her sharp wit cutting through the tension. If they were going to accuse her, Alicia wished they'd at least gotten creative, maybe used some earth magic to secretly record her. Simple lies, boring. Liz, ever the optimist, took Alicia's word for it. But when the three girls insisted Alicia had spewed the foulest insults imaginable, Finn jumped in, rolling his eyes. "Actually," he said, "you're the ones who said all that nonsense. I saw the whole thing." Caught red-handed, the trio faltered. Mel, watching from the sidelines, sighed in disappointment. Alicia, however, decided to live up to her villainous title and keep the theatrics alive. "Less than trash," she sneered, leveling an icy glare at the girls. Liz didn't approve. "Even if they're wrong, calling them trash is too much," she protested. Alicia smirked. "Oh, you sweet, naive little thing," she teased, her taunts making Liz tremble. That's when Eric decided to step in, puffing his chest in defense of Liz. He ranted about her bravery, recounting how she had once protected everyone from a wild wolf at the academy despite shaking with fear. Alicia, unimpressed, raised an eyebrow. "A wolf? At this academy? You mean the kind that doesn't even exist in this kingdom?" She yawned for dramatic effect. "Anyway, I'm bored now." With a wave of dismissal, she turned and left. Liz, now sulking, wondered if she and Alicia could ever be friends. Her brooding triggered a mysterious aura that made the trio of girls suddenly profess undying loyalty to her, leaving Curtis and Finn exchanging curious glances. Later, during tea in the garden, Jill revealed the wolf story was true after all. Odd, since wolves only lived in Laval, a nation with zero ties to Durkees. Alicia, ever the schemer, theorized that Laval might have sent the wolf to test Liz's rumored saintly powers. Using a wolf to mess with someone, that's downright evil. "I should take notes," she mused, grinning wickedly. Her remark made Duke choke on his drink. Without a word, Duke whisked Alicia away to his secret hideout. There, he demanded she stay out of Will's business. Turns out, Duke had been in contact with Will long before her, even sneaking off to Lona to visit him. When Alicia brought up Will's exiled friends in Laval, Duke slammed his hand against a bookcase, growling, "You don't need to know. Don't waste your time on Laval. Just focus on me." Alicia's response? A solid headbutt. "I'm nobody's caged bird," she snapped. Predictably, this only made Duke's obsession worse. Outside, she tried to cool her flushed cheeks, muttering, "That was a lot," but one question burned brighter than her blush. What was the secret about Laval, and why was Duke so desperate to keep it hidden? At the academy, class takes a grim turn when the teacher introduces a troubling topic, a mysterious illness called Doton that has plagued the region for years. The room grows quiet as the teacher asks if anyone can explain the disease. All eyes widen when Jill the servant boy raises his hand. Whispers erupt like wildfire, students muttering that Jill is clearly overstepping his boundaries. The teacher silences the murmurs and allows Jill to speak. He explains that Doton causes spots on the skin that eventually disappear. But it's not a skin issue, it's a condition that damages internal organs. Most cases are found in the Dian River Basin, where residents rely on contaminated river water for their daily needs. His detailed explanation leaves the class in silence. Later, Jill and Alicia talk about his dedication to his studies. Alicia praises his hard work, and Jill admits he's been studying day and night. Their conversation is interrupted by Prince Duke, who enters the room with his usual lighthearted attitude. Alicia dismisses him, saying they're busy, but Duke insists on staying and learning about Doton. Alicia uses a map to explain that the disease is linked to Laval's rapid industrialization. Jill mentions rumors of a rare herb called MTI, believed to cure the illness. Found on cliffs near Laval, the herb is difficult to obtain. Jill also shares the dire situation in Lana Village, where the disease spreads rapidly due to poor medical facilities and proximity to the river. Meanwhile, Prince Duke confides in Mel about his feelings for Alicia. He says he loves her deeply but doesn't want to confine her, likening her to a falcon that deserves to soar freely. Back at the academy, Alicia asks Jill to retrieve a book she left in the library. Jill agrees and heads off, but is stopped by Liz, who asks for his help in understanding Doton. She shares her desire to study hard and build better relationships between villagers and outsiders. When Jill hesitates, Liz uses a strange magical energy that appears to influence him. Under her spell, Jill agrees to help her. Their interaction is interrupted by an angry Prince Duke, who demands to know what Liz has done. She denies any wrongdoing, but Duke drags Jill away, seemingly snapping him out of the trance. Jill returns to Alicia, who scolds him for taking so long, worried something might have happened. Duke warns her that Jill was acting strangely, but Alicia doesn't fully understand his concern. Jill reassures her that he's fine. The scene shifts to Duke speaking with Mill about an investigation. When asked about the Saintess, Mill dismisses her as a figure admired by the public, but of little consequence. She also admits to making no progress on deciphering the ancient texts Duke had assigned to her. In the dining hall, the students are gathered, but tension brews as Jane sits quietly, clutching a pair of scissors with a determined expression. Back in the study room, Alicia and Jill are working together when Alicia reflects on the Doton disease and the strange wolf tied to Liz. She feels the need to visit Laval for answers, but doing so would mean exile from the kingdom, leaving her conflicted. Suddenly, screams echo through the hall. Alicia rushes out to find Jane in a fit of rage, having cut off all of Carol's hair. Turning to Alicia with a furious glare, Jane accuses her. "This is all your fault." Alicia confronts Jane, calmly asking why she acted so cruelly. Jane, defensive, blames Alicia, claiming she's the reason Carol has become so pathetic. Jane explains that Carol spent too much time copying Liz, trying to be like her, and it disgusted her. She adds that just as Alicia had once humiliated her, Carol tried to do the same. Alicia stays composed, pointing out that Jane's actions are fueled by hatred and that resorting to violence only shows she couldn't win with words. Jane snaps, accusing Carol of growing her hair long just to imitate Alicia. Turning to Carol, she says coldly, "You'll never become Alicia." Alicia replies without hesitation, "I already know that." She admits that Carol has always looked up to her but brushes off the drama, deciding it's not worth her time. Internally, Alicia reflects that a true villainess is meant to be hated. Jane, desperate, shouts loudly, accusing Alicia of not caring about Carol at all. Carol interrupts, standing her ground, and reveals that it was Jane who cut her hair. Jane, startled, stumbles over her words, pleading with Carol not to look at her with eyes so much like Alicia's. Without saying a word, Alicia uses her magic to take the scissors from Jane and shocks everyone by cutting her own hair. Smiling, she says, "Now we have the same hairstyle." Jill, impressed, says, "You never fail to amaze me." The scene shifts to Duke, who teases Alicia about her new look, calling it adorably infuriating. Mill, nearby, grumbles about all the work Duke keeps giving her. The mood changes when Duke suddenly calls Mill in a sharp tone. She flinches, muttering how scary he looks when he's angry. The next day, Alicia's bold haircut inspires a trend across the academy. Henry notes how everyone's attention has shifted from Liz to Alicia. In the Rose Garden, a group of girls argue, one accusing another of betraying Liz by siding with Alicia. Henry steps in, calming the argument and leading the girls away. Later, Jill mentions how even Liz's loyal followers seem to be changing their opinions. Alicia interrupts, saying, "I guess I'm starting to carry that villainous aura." But she wonders aloud if people can really change their loyalties so easily. As they walk, Alicia overhears a group of girls bullying Jane, mocking her and throwing mud. "You don't deserve to breathe the same air as Liz," one of them says. Jane cries but doesn't fight back. Alicia steps in, shielding Jane from the mud and glaring at the bullies. "Leave now, and clean yourselves up before I throw the mud back at you," she warns. The girls quickly run away. Jane, still in tears, turns to Alicia and asks angrily, "Why are you helping me? Isn't all this your fault?" She insists Alicia leave her alone. Instead, Alicia uses her magic to clean Jane's clothes and says gently, "It's okay to cry if you need to. Crying isn't weakness, it's how we grow. Stay here until you feel ready. No one will bother you." She casts a protective barrier around the door and leaves Jane to collect herself. Jane finally breaks down in tears, sobbing quietly. Jill looks at Alicia and says, "You're so kind." Alicia shrugs and replies, "Save that for Liz. I just didn't want to see something so unpleasant." The episode ends in the library, where Mill excitedly holds up a book. "I found it," she exclaims, clearly thrilled.